Y nos vamos para Centroamérica. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Central American Voices podcast. Today, we're in a very colorful studio because I have the one and only Kiara Aileen Machado with us today here in the podcast. She is a Salvadoran Guatemalan artist that explores migration, identity, and reconnection through her art. So, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for you to be here. I feel like it has been a very long time coming. As of I don't know how many years. I'm like, I need to do a podcast, and you're finally here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
There's like so much color in this, you know, and I feel like your art is very colorful. In this studio, what is something that for you feels like home?
Yeah, I feel like many things transport me back to home, which goes with the color, like the, intensity, the rich color, the full spectrum. This is my safe space, my sacred space. So I'm truly thankful for y'all coming into here. Because I feel like it's a very vulnerable space too. A space where I create for many, many hours. Yeah, each little piece, I think there's definitely trying to like pinpoint, this like bridge between Central America and then now also bridging into other things, but still keeping like that voice or that identity and culture through like the color or the texture. So there's definitely a lot of hints in there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, talking about home, you grew up in LA.
Yeah.
I mean, you were born and raised in LA, how was for you growing up as a Central American, like in LA, especially, you grew up in Linwood?
I was born in Linwood, but we lived in Watts and now in the San Gabriel Valley.
Okay. Yeah, so how was for you, like, being Central American and being in those spaces that a lot of time maybe we don't have a lot of representation or see ourselves within our own community that we grew up other than home?
I feel like a lot of it was within the walls of our home. I remember even since like kindergarten knowing I'm gonna get the question like, what are you? Or just being referenced as like Mexican. So I feel like it was definitely more so confined within the home, or not confined, but just like, knowing that you don't have to go the extra mile explaining things, or going to like family friends' house, that were Central American, or like house parties. I feel like that was one of the main ways that we maintained that. But I think because of maybe like throughout the years, like, Instagram, right, helps a lot to find these other places versus, when you're growing up, that it was more like word of mouth, and I was also younger, so it's like a lot more family parties. And then now it's so nice that now I like take my parents to events, and that's really cool. So I feel like over time it's changed. And we've also created a lot of our own spaces out of the lack thereof. So it's definitely changed. Growing up, it was more so within the home.
Yeah, I think because I personally feel that it was winning, I would probably say 2015 and on, that I think social media, Central American social media presence is starting to kind of like start. And because also growing up in LA, even like I migrated here, I was like, like I can't find those pockets outside of home, and we reflect a lot of our families or grandmas or mom stories into what we do or what we create or path that we take, and sometimes when we go outside, we try to find that, right? We're always like, oh, like we connect with, of course, other communities, but it's not the same as having like a common ground of being Central American to understand not only trauma, but understand a lot of like migration, common stories, traditions, food,
language.
Like language and everything.
Yeah, with social media, it helped out a lot to even come across these events, and then like making new friends, right? Like connecting, because I felt like a lot of the friends that I had that were Central American were family friends because, like proximity and stuff, but like, stumbling across another person who was Central American, it didn't really happen a lot, or maybe they were, but I don't know if it was just also, again, I don't know. I think that a lot goes into it. There's a lot.
Yeah. So talking about like, growing up into like the Central American identity that mostly was at home. For you, when now, going the path of an artist, when we remember the stories and the you know, those traditions that was within our families that we didn't see outside, right? Did that somehow like translate it to your work, or how did you kept out there's a story that from your mom or your grandma that you're like, when I paint or when I create certain things, like I imagine that or I go there?
It most definitely translated into my work. And that being like demanding that attention, like the frustration of having the same conversation over and over again. When I was first like even learning how to use the material, of course, right, it wasn't as intentional, right? Because, you know, like still lives and stuff like that, and just literally learning how to move around the work, the medium. Once it started getting to like, okay, you know, I'm using my medium, is I have to put a meaning to this, or put like, make work with intention, was definitely, yeah, like one of my main things was bringing in identity and culture. And I feel like one of the first questions that I was trying to assess within my work was representation, which was what came with the botanicals and the worry dolls being hidden to talk about Central American erasure. Then came like, you know, a different series, like when we do get represented, who gets represented, right? We're not a monolith. There's so many intersecting identities, so many complexities, right? So yeah, I feel like it was always since the beginning wanting to assess, one being like, I'm Central American, like that's the first thing that you're gonna know. It definitely gave me that space to demand that attention with the color. And you know, then thankfully I was able to work bigger, so I was like, okay, if it's not gonna be the, you know, the color that's like drawing you in, it's gonna be like the size of it. There's no way that you can ignore this piece. For that same reason of all this like built up over the years, and also knowing, you know, like how beautiful our culture is and like our resistance, and we're small but we've been there, you know. And yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of things that I explore within my work with always having that in mind, because it's important to me. I would have loved to have seen that when I was younger, and now I feel like I do come across, you know, more work where it's like I can see it and know I'm like, they're Central American, or they're like from the diaspora. This feels like home. There's something about this that I know. And it's so nice to also have that experience, or like folks walking by and stop and I know it. And it's like the way that they ask a certain question, like, you're Central American, aren't you? And it's just it's so nice. I love it. Yeah. It's a great way to like start that conversation, and it's really cool.
Your art is very particular. Like that's how I see it. Like it's very Central American. Yeah. And not only what you paint, the color, the stroke, the vibrance, the storytelling that you take to that, like it feels like home. There's meaning and connections to different pieces or to different people that you have painted before. And it's so cool that you talk about when people see your work, because before we started recording this podcast, we talked about the first time I saw your work, and it was on the cover Lineage Rain with Janelle Pineda, and we interviewed her here on the podcast, and I remember talking about her, like, the cover feels like, I don't know, I was like, it's different. It's like the colors, the strokes, the like everything feels like, you know, what this poetry book is about. But it was like it leads you in to feel like a comfort. And then I remember going to Caravana, which it was showcased as someone's art, and I saw a big piece of you, like a big piece. Yeah. And then I remember I was like, oh, this is the same artist that did Lineage Rain. And I remember from there I started following. And it's like that thing that I was like, oh, she is unapologetically Central American. Like, she's not asking for permission. And that's what I love about art. Like, it's not like, for example, film that sometimes is very explained. This is very get what you, like, you know? Yeah. But when a Central American sees that, it's different meaning because we are seeing ourselves represented. Yeah. Like I remember a conversation that my mom had at one of your galleries that she was saying about this cacao. Yeah. And then she was fascinated about that. And then I remember the painting kind of like was como que estaba en un booth and like un cacao, and then like you talking to mom about it, and she was telling me like all this time, like, oh, like it just feel like I remember like this scene, like how it could be like in Honduras. So like,
and that was in Honduras, that drawing was in Honduras.
And she was like, oh, it transported me to a place where like how giving or culture is of like, hey, like here I'm offering you like something, you know, and I think that your art translate that, you know, and I'm very happy that you are being able to make this a medium, because in our community that's not very common, or it's hard, or a lot of our parents, they like, you know, they're not going to support because of X, Y, and Z, you know. But one day you started seeing art as like, this is not just art, storytelling. This is for me to, one, create a career, but something that I can kind of like be resistant with it, you know, because art is a resistance.
Yeah.
But also like to make a space in a way of like, you're not gonna fit a mold, but you're gonna make sure you're included in the conversation.
Yeah. And I feel like that's it was kind of like training, right, of growing up being Central American. It prepares you so much for having this wider perspective and just like constantly being ready to defend. And so that definitely helped in going through academia. I went to community college first, and then I transferred to Cal State Long Beach. And so already having like a lifelong, right, only knowing I'm gonna get pushback. I was like, I already know, one, the pronunciation of my name, two, like my identity. So it, you know, I was already prepped for it. Not to say that it like made it any easier, but I was like, okay, you know, I'm prepped for it. But it was definitely, I feel like since I was very young and, you know, wanted to be an artist, I didn't know what that meant at all. And so it was definitely like a growing into it, because even as I was like deciding, having like little panic attacks and like deciding to be an artist, I was like, I have no idea what this looks like, right? Not having examples of like living artists like firsthand, and actually knowing that that could be a career. And then once I did choose to be an artist and be like, okay, I want to do it. Of being like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't even know what this means. Like, you know, and thankfully, you know, like I think my parents too, right? Like they also didn't quite understand, like, you know, what does that mean? But so it was, we definitely like grew together of like them, you know, seeing what this looks like, right? Even a studio, right? Or like me drawing like nude figures, like, you know, me telling them like, you know, you look at the figure as just like the figure, right? It's not anything else. And so like them being cool with that. So it was like, and then also having like bringing them into like these spaces that we're historically excluded from, not just as like Latina, but as Central Americans. I had an opening reception last night at a gallery, and, you know, they're always excited to go and like get ready and like look at the work. And so it's just like so nice to go and be included in these spaces, get invited into these spaces for the things that I'm painting, which is really cool, right? It's, again, it hasn't been easy, but it's also nice to have all these opportunities, different types of opportunities, where all my work is centered around creating art.
Do you got any pushback from your parents of like, you should consider another like career?
Maybe when I was younger, not like pushback, but I think literally just not understanding. Like what does that mean, right? Because then at the very beginning too, I also didn't know what answer to give. I just knew like the arts, or like they'd come in as I'm like working on something. You know, my parents, so they like love everything. They're like, oh, that looks so good. Se mira tan bonito. Like, it's not done yet. And then later on they come like, oh, todavía como necesita un poco de trabajo. I'm like, it's done. You know, so, but it's just
like me when I intro, I was like, oh, that's cute. It's not done. I was like, okay, but it's cute though. It's getting there.
Thank you. So yeah, it's just like all these different nuances, right? Of like different levels. I think it's definitely been, we're just both have grown in this, because I'm also like figuring it out, right? Like how to do different things, or like what my career path is compared to even my friends who are also like painters and visual artists, right? We all have our own career paths and like what we focus on.
Also, like, for example, when you were entering this, have you ever, like, since you were a kid, you grew up like painting, or it was something that kind of was like, you kind of got interested maybe later in life?
It was definitely always present. I do remember there was like a chunk of time when I, again, with like, what am I going to do? How do I make money off of art? There was definitely a time when I strayed away from it, and I was trying to pick different careers. I hadn't like established it, but I was like, okay, what if I do this? What if I do that? Right? Like very like, you know, typical like careers that would bring honor. But after a while, I was like, I'm not happy, or like I cannot see myself like going that way in academia for this. And for a time I had settled on like art therapy, and then my sister went for psychology, and she's like, I think you just be doing like my courses and then art on the side. I was like, oh no, I can't do that. I cannot do that. And so then I think that was when I got back into art classes at community college, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been missing this. Like, this is what I need. So I feel like whatever you're born to be, you naturally just gravitate back towards that. And so, yeah, I just once I started taking those community colleges, I was like, okay, yeah, this is it. Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it.
Because we worry about financials later. You know what? I think that's a very good way of also putting it, because it's like sometimes you need to follow your heart. As a filmmaker, I remember the pushback that I have from my family, not from my mom, but from other family member. And it's like, I see your concerns, but at the same time, like, I'm not about to be in an office miserable and not following what I actually want to do. Yeah. And like, for example, you following art, and you're getting a lot of pushbacks, but if you're not passionate about it, if you don't not only believe in your work, but if you're not, like, your heart is not there, you're gonna give up. Yeah. And that's easy to give up if you don't feel like in your heart, you know. So how was for you, like, in this path, when you got like pushback, or like in the world that they don't see art, you know what I mean, here in the United States, in the very white spaces, right? That they don't see our art as sometimes like worth to be in places like that. Like, what kind of kept you pushing to be like, yeah, accept me? Oh yeah,
anger and frustration. Because of that same thing, right? Growing up in a very like white perspective, the artists that you learn about, all white. And yeah, there were like some artists like Van Gogh, right? Love his work. But aside from like all the other art movements and stuff, and I was like, I just don't get it. Or like, I'm not connected to it. Or like certain artists that have a huge platform, right? Have historically, but then they have like all this baggage where I'm like, wait, how can you can just like dismiss that and, you know, still idolize these artists that are horrible? And I feel like strongly that you can't separate the artist from their art. And I remember not until like I was in undergrad that I came across an artist, Kerry James Marshall. I saw his work and I was like, I get it. Like it like instantly seeing it, right? Because he paints a lot about like the Black figure excluded from history, and just his paintings are so beautiful. They're figurative, expressive, and then the way that he talks about like his work too, right? Intentional, and also like him talking about like seeing Andy Warhol's work and be like, I don't get it. It does nothing for me. And like, I think seeing another artist at that level say something about another artist, of just being like cool with being like, I don't like it, I don't get it, it does nothing for me. And I was like, I feel that same way, but of like not knowing if that was like an okay thing to say, because like so many other people, you know, like hold these people on such high levels. So to see that and be like, oh, okay, so we can't say these things. They're like, it's okay to look at something and have those feelings validated, right? And so, and then ever since then, right, like of coming across many other artists, right? Because they've always been there. I think it's just the coverage. Yeah. And the accessibility, or like them not being taught in our classes, which should be, because I was like, instantly got it. I instantly like got it and understood without knowing anything, right? Versus the other way around of seeing it and being like, I don't get it. I have to really read this, or somebody has to tell me on this, because I'm just not getting it. It's so interesting that you mentioned that too, of like, sometimes you don't have to get it. You know what I mean? And then there's that, you know, like, you don't have to get it. It's like, you don't get it because you're not connected to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I talk about this conversation with my first work artist, the music side, that sometimes like, okay, this song spoke to me, but the other one, I don't know. It's all about perspective and connection to someone's work. You don't have to like everybody's work. And so I feel like sometimes when I go to museums, I'm like, I don't get it. And that's completely okay. And that's completely okay. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, it's a little paint, or one color. I don't get it. Right, yeah. You know, and I think sometimes for a very long time, I was like, do I have to get it? I have to get it? If I go to a museum, do I have to get what this art means? And then I read the description and I still don't. And it's like,
I think you bring a very important. We don't get it because we don't get connected, but then we see other things of like, I completely understand and see it from others' perspective, like maybe some Asian experiences, some Black experience, Native experiences. Like I get it because at the end of the day, there's an intersection there that correlates with my own. And then you have a piece that's called Frustraciones de una
Centroamericana.
Okay, and then we talk a little bit about that, but can you kind of like express a little bit how like that, of course, you said that the reason of going into pushing for, like being in this space was a lot of anger and frustration.
Yeah.
So that translates literalmente to that piece. How did that came across, and why was it so meaningful for you to create it?
So this painting, as you said, is called Frustraciones de una Centroamericana. And it was actually painted in my studio, which back then was my studio / bedroom. And it was painted from life. So like the difference of painting from life than painting from a reference photo is that I was standing here and like painting it as I was standing there and setting it all up, versus painting it from a photo. So getting back into the position and leaving everything as it was so I can do multiple sessions and paint it. And this was in response to just the little frustrations of being in academia, constantly, getting my work and myself referenced as Chicana after like stating multiple times that I'm Central American. So there was just a lot of frustration around like the same conversations at different levels of academia, right? And just kind of realizing, ignorance is at any level. And just really wanting to, this was one of my final pieces. So just all of that buildup and just, putting it all out there, some very obvious things, and then just kind of going through everything and making sure that everything that I was putting in there was intentional.
Yeah, I think as for me, when I see this, it's like, yes, there's a frustration we see on the face of the paint, but also like the little details. Like you have regarding the Manchu, you have two flags, right? El Salvador and Guatemala, which is your background. You have Antigua, you have like not even the map. Like even the map, I think it says a lot, right? Because a lot of people just confuse it with Mexico. And it's like, no, and also like just the little details of like, to me, if I see this just right now, like to me is a normal Central American room, but I see the frustration of the constant erasure and the constant having to continue explaining yourself. And I think I can sense it from that paint.
Thank you for acknowledging that. And that also kind of goes with the color scheme. Here in the corner too, I have an inspiration of one of my favorite artists, Carrie James Marshall. But yeah, just really wanting to emphasize anger. And in a way, I also kind of feel like I kept repainting my face because at some point too, I feel like there is sadness too, which I think just naturally came through out of both, so much anger and then just like sadness of just like the realization again of just like with the same group of people with, of like, okay, I get it, right? The first time, maybe, but then like second, third, and just again, right, as like so many of us already know, this constant conversation. And like you said, again, with like the map, the literal geographical, and we're so close. We're so close because I also understand, right, not knowing every single country, but there's a space in like learning, right? Like, oh, okay, I didn't know, but we're literally so close. And I think that's what also goes into it of we're not that far, how would you not know? How do you like skip over us? And, just Mexico and then South America. And just really wanting to, really include all these things that I grew up, a lot of us grew up with knowing and are very normal to us, and really wanting to include all of that.
Yeah, it honestly, it reflects. I can feel it's not only like a syndrome, but also like an experience from the diaspora. It's like first generation. Like we see the next, but also like I don't know, things that are regular to a Central American room in our household, but also in the diaspora, right? Like we bring all the, Dios bendiga este hogar, we always bring those things, in, from our trips, and like the little muñequitas. And also, I think I wanted to ask about the color, because like Central America is very colorful, and I think we can sense it, but there is a part of, I think, darkness that I feel that I think is a translation of color when it comes to your anger and sadness, when it comes to las frustraciones, So how was color in this piece? Like how do you see color, or like the textures of the strokes for you from your artistic approach specifically for this piece?
Yeah, I feel like color definitely emphasizes or can kind of point you into the right direction of like, yeah, what's the mood for this painting? Because yeah, I love color, right? And I feel like it's so natural. Yeah, because like, pillowcase or una hamaca has so many colors, and it's like vibrant colors. So I feel like having the full spectrum is just so natural for me. But yeah, like, this part is a little more dimly lit, or there are certain parts where, this red, I really wanted the emphasis on red and standing on this red, because, what is red, right? Anger, passion. So definitely really using that and being intentional with that. And then having like these lighter areas, right here, if you were to like cover the rest of it, right? It's like more of a just what would kind of look like a still life, and the color palette being true to its color versus like, in this literally like 90% of it below it has a more darker tone, more intense, right? More moody. And so, yeah, just kind of playing around with like a full spectrum of mood through color. It was a final piece for one of my figurative paintings. And I remember the previous critique, I had also done a self-portrait. And again, like these self-portraits did not have to be like narrative at all, right? They were just generally just a self-portrait. But again, I was like, dude, these art materials are expensive. Like if I'm going to paint and use these, like I'm going to put a meaning to it. And it was just like the previous one, I remember I had literally said like, oh, I don't remember if I had included something, or I was like talking about Central American erasure, because I had included something in the background of my self-portrait. And I was like, I clearly stated, I was like, I'm Central American, my mom is from Guatemala, my dad is from El Salvador. And then the first comment, beautiful Chicano art. And I was like, I'm not Mexican American, I'm not Chicana, Central American, so it was just like within the same conversation, right? It wasn't a day later. I couldn't have said it any other like clearer way. So there was just like all this like built up anger, and I don't remember if then that went off into like a conversation, and then it was just like a reminder of all these other comments, like I think like passive aggressive, or like again them just like not realizing that it was ignorant, or even having this like grace to learn, right? Or unlearn. And I remember that was a grad student. And so that was also another level of like, okay, no matter what level of like a higher level of academia, you're still ignorant. It was kind of like a depleting moment too, where I was like, anywhere, right? Anywhere. But also a reminder too of being like, okay, some things have changed, like some things have like not changed. No matter how clear you are, some people are just not going to hear you. So then I did this piece again, right? Writing like a very clear note of like, this is not Chicano art, doing the map and stuff. And then that brought on a whole nother conversation. It's like, is this all necessary? Like, this is very literal, so it was just, yeah, then it went off into like not even critiquing the piece, but more so going into the meaning, where I was like, I thought this was just about the like figure, so it was just, yeah, it was a lot, but I think those conversations, I wouldn't have them again, but I think it was just very pivotal moments, learning moments, to have those. And it's also easier for me to like relate to other folks who are like having a much harder time in academia, or like art within academia, or, post academia. So yeah, so it's just a lot of learning.
Yeah, I feel like it gets tiring. I personally feel Central Americans have to over-explain their own identity here in the United States. Like, we have to say it many times.
Yeah.
And it's like, but there's no but when I'm telling you who I am.
Yeah.
You cannot question me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you who I am, where my family's from, what is my identity, my background. Why are you continue questioning?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then the question goes like, but why do you feel that? You know, and so it's just like, okay.
Yeah,
So
and then I tell you, and then you understand, but you're like, okay, you're being a little bit passive aggressive. It's like, well, because I have to over-explain it.
yeah.
It's like, you're questioning my own identity.
Yeah.
And if you think that is not necessary,
Yeah.
how do you think I feel over-explaining it to you? And
Yeah.
continue every single conversation advocating for who I am, for you not to only erase me.
To even know like the basic stuff, right? And it's like not even going to like even extra, like the extra steps of all, like everything else. But yeah, it's like literally just the basics.
Yeah.
And that goes into, it's a lot of effort.
Throughout the years, I became like, come on, in every conversation, a little bit like, I feel like I'm a teacher every single time. Like when I talk about Central America, when we talk about certain aspects of Central America, that I'm like, do you know from where that comes from? Do you know from this word, like whatever word it comes from? Do you know, for example, why is that experience? One conversation that I often have, which, you know, I probably make this out of topic, but, you know, is about the banana. Because a simple banana to you,
Right.
it's a lot of suffering, a lot of history, a lot of misplacement, a lot of trauma for us.
Yeah.
So when you just gave me a banana to me, to you, you're just sharing a snack. To me, you're giving me something that for years and years traumatized and like displaced my own community. So of course I'm going to tell you, you know from where this banana comes from. Do you understand about this brand? Do you understand about this? Do you understand why, like in my country, they call it minimal? Do you understand? It's because it doesn't pass the minimum size to be exported. Like, I explained that so you understand what this means to me, you know? And so people are very like receptive of like, you know, to that conversation. A lot of people are like, it's so unnecessary.
Those are the people that aren't gonna get it because like we don't have to explain this stuff, but like, and then that goes into like right choosing. Okay, like this is worth the energy. This is not.
Yeah. So I want also to talk about, now that you talk about similar experiences from other cultures and other backgrounds, you travel for your art. You've been to Guatemala, Honduras, and then you've been to Cuba, which, you know, is part of the Caribbeans, and a lot of similar things. So can you talk about like, how has this travels for you and being in the communities, right? Because right now, here in the United States, we're surrounded by first generation, the people who left, they were displaced, and diaspora and all this stuff. But then you go back to those communities, those who stayed.
Yeah.
How has been a connection for you for like this, for your art? How has that either help you create from different angle, from this point of view, from different perspectives?
It's helped me a lot. I think it's really, definitely widened even further in my perspective. Also a lot of learning and unlearning, right? Like how important, I don't always get it right, but like how important language is, right? And like definitely being able to compare and contrast choosing art as a career here versus like the possibilities of choosing art over there, right? Like I'm not gonna be ignorant and be like, just do art, you know, when it's like, where's the nearest art store? We did a mural in Honduras with youth from all over different departments, and they were all campesino families, right? And they were like youth, but they were like from, I think the youngest was maybe 13, oldest was like 32 or something like that. So it was like wide range. So it was there's like maybe I think 4 folks who had some experience with the arts, and then everybody else who hadn't. And so it was like, so a lot of them, it was their first time going outside of their aldea for many of them. It was also really cool just to see like their excitement, right? Like kind of like shyness at the very beginning. And then like throughout the week of it was a really good group that they all like, you know, got along and like would play soccer and stuff. And at first like not wanting or only wanting to like block off, you know, just one color because I was like easier. And then like as the days progressed, like, yo voy a pintar esta parte, voy a hacer una flor, le voy a poner detalles. And so that was really cool to see. But it was also just like, again, like, okay, then they go back, right? And then
what's that?
yeah, like, again, just literal art materials. And of course you can like work with anything that you have, but then to time. Right, like they're campesinos. They're like, oh yeah, like as soon as I get back, I have to get there like 6 a.m. because then, you know, I have to do this and that and that. So, and then another thing that has like that I'm like constantly thinking about, like the first time that I was showing in Central America, I was like, oh my gosh, what if they hate it? You know, what if I'm like painting really redundant things? You know, like what if they sit there like, yeah, you know, because like there's no question of like. You know, they're in Central America. So, right. So there's no question about like, yeah, of course we exist. Or like the things, you know, that I'm painting, like we see this every day. Like, why would you, you know, but thankfully it was like, it was good, but it also like brought in those questions. Right. So then I was like assessing like, oh, how does my work fit back? Like when I do get back, and then like also my body as like fluidity and that privilege of being able to go back and forth. So yeah, so I think it definitely has brought on those experiences. And even like when my family is able to travel to, like, how are they experiencing this, right? Like things have changed, words have changed. My mom's like, we'd never say, like, we haven't said this. And like, that's a really new word. I'm like, Mom, it's been so many years last time that you came. Or like my grandma was like, oh, Antigua, no ha cambiado nada. And then of course, La Capital, she's like, oh, como todo esto es nuevo. And so like now I think like the body of work that I'm creating are creating these windows of experiences, and also like painting these things for folks who can't travel, and like as a way of being able to experience that from afar. But still, right, like you're brought into the pieces, kind of joining in, because again, like I'm still a foreigner, right? Like I'm descendant, but I'm not living there and stuff. So I'm still experiencing it kind of like as a foreigner. So it does bring in like all these complexities. And then even then, right, it's the Caribbean, completely different. There's a lot of stuff that's very similar, but language is completely different. Food is completely different. I think it's definitely adding another enrichment like to my work in being able to think about all these different accessibility points.
Yeah. How does this art look in Central America? Because right now we see it because we were raised here.
Yeah, yeah.
But over there, that's all we know. But,
it is very specific.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But also, when I remember going to a museum in, por ejemplo, in Honduras, a lot of the art represented there, it comes from a very colonial point of view. Very like the colonizing perspective. Yeah. The highlighting of what it was, colonization, from Spain and story. And it's like, yes, like I see it, like I know it's part of us and we have to of course acknowledge, but there's also erasure of a lot of our community, a lot of our campesina, a lot of our resistance groups. And that's what I personally, you know, maybe hace 14 años. You know what I mean?
No, but I could be that, because also, the art movement within Central America, that's another thing that really interests me, is like contemporary artists too. Like, what are they painting about? Like, what are they addressing? But also art spaces, right? Because then that also changes from like El Salvador to Guatemala. And also, again, because I feel like what I've heard is that there is a huge movement, but in South America, which I can't remember if it's like Argentina or was it, I think Brazil. There was a book by Gensi Cornejo, and she also brings it up where she's like, if I'm remembering correctly, that even then within the Americas, that Central America is still excluded. So I feel like a lot of like things that are within the States still transfer over to like the Americas. And then also, museum spaces, I'm sure, are very interesting. I went to a couple in Guatemala, but I still need to go to more, right? Because I feel like being Central American, and from the diaspora, there's a lot of learning on your own.
On your own,
where you have to like, and so like a lot of these things that I am learning as an adult. And again, and it's also like from like friends that, you know, give me direct references, or like, oh, you should like go to this museum if you ever have the chance, right? So there's a lot of learning later on in life, because I I didn't have that as a younger child, not because I didn't want to or my parents didn't want to, but literal accessibility.
Yeah, but I also feel like, you know, for example, in the art world, what I think it's very problematic, honestly, that we see more of Central American art from our indigenous communities and the international, like in other museums, but in our own.
Yeah, and it's more of like it feels a little more taken advantage of, or like voyeuristic.
But I have this conversation with mom a lot too, of like the way, I'm very focused on this in Honduras, honestly. The way our history stopped, that huge part, it gets erased.
Yeah.
So what other people see, like, you know, from international other countries or other nationalities, they see us and they're like, oh my God, the Mayans, the Lencas and all stuff. They, you know, taking advantage, sitting us of like, oh my God, you know. But on our own spaces, we're like, Cristobal Columbus, this and that. And it's like, why can't we just learn about us, you know? And then I think it's that contrast. I don't know, like in Central America, I always see this point of like, outside we get to celebrate ourselves more than inside, because when we're in Central America, and we always see of those who came rather than who we were. I mean, we are. Those who fought, like the resistance or indigenous community, and who legit is us. So I don't know. It's like, to me, it's a very interesting contrast of how art in Central America sometimes is perceived.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I was also like talking to another artist, Katie Numi, who she's Belizean, and also like how within Central America, I feel like all you learn about is only the country that you're in and not the neighboring countries. And how, and this may also, I don't know, border and forced displacement or forced migration. Forced displacement, because migration is natural. But yeah, how like you just don't learn about the neighboring country.
We're so similar.
Yeah.
But okay, before we end this episode, because we can continue.
Part two.
Part two. Okay. Is there something like, you know, right now that pursuing this career, you see your art evolving? Is there something that for you, when you see yourself in a couple of years, what is something that you would like for people to see in your art? And what is something that you still want to do?
What I hope to see like down the line with my work or throughout the years, if I'm blessed to be here long enough, is definitely like still growth within my work, different conversations, but still honoring the past, you know, still hoping that like, you know, folks get excited about my work and are able to connect to it in different forms, and that it always like starts a good conversation, whatever it may be. What I hope to continue to do is like still be able for my work to migrate to new spaces, and for different communities to be able to see it. Because I think that definitely has brought a lot of learning space for myself to like be comfortable and also uncomfortable. It definitely still show more in Central America, I think, to still bring up different questions or just see like how that is, and to connect more and learn more. Like I said about contemporary artists, living artists within Central America, just to see what are the issues that they're like talking about within their work, and just expanding and like going to new places, and for my like family to also have those experiences with me.
Thank you. And because your art has traveled all around the world,
thankfully.
Bless. So before we come and finish this episode, sad to finish it, you know, can you tell their audience where they can find you and how they can support you?
You can find me on Instagram which is the only thing that I have, which is Kiara_Aileen_arts. And hopefully you'll see me at a city wherever you are.
Well, thank you so much, Kiara, for being part of this podcast. Long time coming. I had a lot of fun talking with you, and yeah, we'll see everybody on the next episode.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.